Today I'm going to be talking about these 5 horrible gaming mice. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Some of them are horrible and some are much less horrible than others. However, they are all in the price range of less than $10 on Amazon as of now. I'm checking out 5 gaming mice under $10 each, and I'm going to see which ones are shit and which ones are actually worth buying, perhaps. Now, first off, why would you even buy a $10 gaming mouse? Well, for one, let's say you're just on an extremely tight budget. That might be the only option you have. Or maybe it's not necessarily for you, but a gift for a loved one, a spouse, child, friend, who is kind of into gaming, but not really enough to warrant buying like a $50 gaming mouse, for example. That could be a possibility. Or maybe you're just looking for a reliable backup. Well, I don't want to say reliable, but maybe you're just looking for a backup mouse in case your daily driver, shit hits the fan or whatever, and you just need a backup right away. Then maybe you'll look into something like this. By the way, these are all the top-rated, some of the top-rated user-reviewed mice on Amazon, so that's why I picked them. And I've already arranged them here in front of me from my least favorite mouse on your right to my most favorite mouse. And I'm going to be going down the line from worst to best, explaining what works for me and what doesn't. So on that note, why don't we go ahead and take a look at our first contender here, which is the Bengoo. These all have funky names because they're all, Chinese OEM knockoff brands or whatever, and a lot of them are using the same parts and whatnot. But this is Bengoo, and you can always tell it's Chinese OEM crap because it's got like 3 different names. It's got like GameStart, Hemzone, and then the product page on Amazon says Bengoo, so who knows what it's really called. Honestly, the comfort level is fairly good. I like the shape, I like the feel when I put my hand on the mouse. I am a claw grip user, so bear that in mind. That's the perspective I'm looking at all of these reviews as. Yeah, the comfort level is actually pretty good. It's fairly comfortable for my hand and the way I use mice. However, it is fairly lightweight. It's actually the lightest mouse, I believe, in our lineup here, and I prefer a bit of heft to my gaming mice, and this is just far too light for that, so I would have to dock it some points there. Also, I forgot to mention this, that all of these mice are using optical sensors, and all of them are horrible. That's just nature of the beast. It comes with the territory that if you buy a $10 gaming mouse, you're gonna get a pretty lousy sensor. So just for the sake of argument, assume that all of these sensors are the equal amount of suck. Now, my biggest gripe with this mouse is that the buttons are all super hypersensitive. First of all, they're springy, especially the front and back buttons. They are incredibly springy and not very tactile at all. They're rather mushy. Aside from that, the buttons are just really easily pressed, and I experienced a lot of misclicks when I was trying to game with this thing. Just, from moving really fast, I would turn really fast in game and then accidentally hit the side button. It's also fairly cheap. I would say this has the worst build quality out of all 5 of the mice here. Not just in terms of just how light it is, but also the scroll wheel seems really kind of wonky, and the DPI buttons in particular. Like, listen to this. Is there even anything in this mouse? It's just completely hollow. It's just like hollow plastic clicking. Yeah, so it doesn't sound very good, not very satisfying to click, too sensitive on the buttons pretty much everywhere. However, it's comfortable. That's the one redeeming quality. However, I still would not recommend it, even for $10. Let's move on to the next mouse. This one is a Funta. And again, there's like 30 names on here. It also says Zelotes. I think it's just a much wider profile, so it fits your hand a lot differently. It's kind of hard to compare to the Bengoo. However, it is very comfortable. I do like it. There are some gripes though that I have. The side here, the pinky grip is very slippery on this outer side of the mouse. My pinky just kind of tends to slide around on that area, and it's not the best. I wish there was a bit more grip there. And while there is some grip for your thumb, it's kind of got this recessed, these little grooves, and the grooves kind of, I don't know, they kind of like sink into my thumb after a while. They don't feel as comfortable after prolonged periods of time. So I'm not a huge fan of that. The build quality is better than the Bengoo. However, it's still lacking in the buttons. All these side buttons are springy here. The left and right mouse buttons are pretty solid. Just kind of like the nice level of tightness that I like. And also the scroll wheel is much better than the Bengoo. And the scroll click requires a bit of actuation force to actually click in the scroll wheel. I wish it was a bit easier. It does have a DPI button for up to 5500 DPI, which is nice. It's also got a braided cable, a braided USB cable. Actually, all these mice have braided USB cables, surprisingly, except for this one, which is a USB, but it's got kind of a rubber material, and I'll get into that later. So my main gripes with this mouse is that I'm not a fan of the pinky grip that's super slippery on the outside here. and the side buttons and this front button here are very springy and do not feel very good when clicking. However, they are very well placed. I will say that. So this next one is the Zotac or Zotac. I don't know. It's not Zotac. That's not what I said. But okay, we've got some LEDs here that are kind of just cycling through different colors. I don't believe you can change any of them. Just like the Bengu, I didn't mention that. It also has a bunch of funky colors, 7 I believe, that just cycles through. The side grips here, this side grip on the outside is much better than the Afunta, which is a little bit more like kind of a rubberized material. And the inside thumb grip is also nice to rest your thumb on. However, it does feature those same grooves that we saw on the Afunta, which I'm not a fan of again. The buttons are relatively tactile. The scroll wheel, so far this is the best scroll wheel that we've seen. And DPI button is firm, but has a nice click to it. And the issue that I'm having right now is the front and back buttons. The back button is very accessible, but the front one is a little bit out of reach for me. I wish both of these buttons were just moved back, you know, a smidge, a couple centimeters maybe, and that would have been perfect. And I was having some issues with this mouse. Anytime I'd plug it into my to Hotline over here, the system would just blue screen. It just crashed instantly. I finally got it to work by just rebooting and, you know, rolled the dice by sticking this mouse in again, and somehow it didn't crash that time, so I was able to test it out more thoroughly. Also, even though the scroll wheel feels great, in practice, it actually sucks when you're scrolling, you know, through web pages and whatnot. The speed of the scrolling fluctuates like crazy. You'll be going, scrolling a mile a minute, and then all of a sudden you'll just like it'll get stuck, if you will, and you'll just have to keep scrolling until it evens out again. So that wasn't really good. This is the only mouse that had an issue with the scroll wheel like that. Next up, we've got the Sodi, and actually on the top of the mouse here it says James Donkey. I don't know. But you can see it's got some nice orange LED accents that are very subtle. It's got a subtle glow on the back end, as well as kind of peeking through the DPI button in the middle, you know, at the same time. It looks really kind of a classy mouse, actually. For $10, I would say this probably has the highest build quality so far. The actual comfort level is pretty good, and actually I love the weight. I love the weight. It's got some nice heft to it, and it's got these grips on the side that are kind of a gel material, and they're really, like, I don't want to say sticky, but they're really grippy, and I'm not used to feeling this kind of material on mice. However, it actually feels pretty nice. I wouldn't mind using this mouse, just for things. The scroll wheel is also very sturdy. It's not wobbly at all. It's got a nice firm click, and left and right buttons are fairly tight. The side buttons are probably my one complaint here. They're a bit springy, and this does go up to 2000 DPI. I wish it went a little bit more than that. It's also got an on-off switch on the bottom here. Oh, that's just for the LEDs. And again, this is the one mouse that doesn't have a braided cable. Instead, it uses this rubber cable, and it's very strange. I don't know why they used rubber. Maybe it's just to go with the style. However, I think rubber for a cable is not the best because it gets snagged on things easily. There's quite a bit of friction. I'm not a huge fan of that. But overall, this is a very comfortable mouse, and if it wasn't for the crappy sensor, I'd probably even pay more than $10 for it. So that's gonna bring us to our last and my favorite mouse personally, which is the TechNet Raptor. And this mouse looks very similar to the Cooler Master Sentinel. If you remember the CM Storm Sentinel, it looks very similar to that. I'm curious to know if they've got, this working with the same OEM at some point. However, it is different, and it's super comfortable. It is my favorite mouse in terms of comfort level, just because it matches the shape of my hand very naturally. But what really impressed me with this mouse are the switches. The switches for the left and right buttons are incredibly tight, and they feel really good to click. You wouldn't even think that this is a $10 mouse. Also, the front and back buttons, while they're not as high quality, I would say, as the James Donkey over here, they do not feel springy at all. They are simply like, you go less than a millimeter and it's just a click. There's no spring action whatsoever. It's just no bullshit. You press it and it clicks. It's a very satisfying click. Again, they're plastic switches and they're a little bit on the cheaper side. However, it still feels really good and tight. That's what she said. You got a DPI button. I believe this goes up to 2000 DPI as well, just like the Sodi. And again, 6 buttons. It's got blue LEDs all around on the scroll wheel as well as the body, kind of on 3 different areas there. And the scroll wheel is actually fairly nice as well. It's got some loose scrolling action. It's not too rigid, and the scrolling button itself, the scroll click, feels just right. And it does have a little bit of texture on the sides here. So where your ring finger or pinky would go on the outside, and where your thumb goes, it's still really smooth plastic, and I would have liked a little bit, like just a bit of grip material. However, they've just got a little bit of etching to create just ever so slightly a sensation of grip. However, it is definitely notably more slippery than the SODI with its gel grips. And it's got a black braided cable, very classic. And overall, super comfortable mouse. Switches are good. Everything's good. Everything checks out. So for 10 bucks, yes, I would recommend this mouse. I would even recommend the SODI. I would recommend the James Donkey any day of the week. But if I had to choose, I would probably go with the TechNet Raptor. This is by far the best $10 gaming mouse I have ever had the privilege of using.